Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Richard. Firstly, I would just like to say a massive thank you to everybody who has recently subscribed to the channel. It's actually quite comforting to know that people are following me on the progress of my From Shed to Layout videos. Just means that, you know, I'm actually inspired and have the enthusiasm to continue making the videos and also continue working on the layout, which is great. So thank you very much. I do aim to try and release a new video every Friday, which is kind of good for my motivation because it keeps me going on the layout and it means that I have something to focus on. So keeping that in mind, this video I'm going to be talking about the next section that I'm planning on doing some work on, which is the industrial area. The industrial area at the moment is just basically a collection of small buildings and various elements that I've been building just in my spare time really. It initially started off with me wanting to build a warehouse. Now this was inspired by a retail park that I visited that had buildings that had brick on the bottom and then sort of corrugated metal as a sort of top floor. I really liked the design and I kind of wanted to build an actual building rather than just scenery. So I decided to build the warehouse. I wanted to create a building, but I wasn't entirely focused on creating total realism. So the building that I have put together, it is scratch built, but it's more inspired by rather than a recreation of the building that I saw at the retail park. So what I decided to do was build the warehouse out of polystyrene. It was nice and sturdy, it was nice and light, I had plenty of the stuff lying around, as you can see. One of the aspects I wanted to include in my warehouse was lighting. Now I didn't want to incorporate lighting where I had to wire it into the baseboard itself. So with that in mind, I actually purchased some small LED fairy lights. What I wanted to do was include these in the building, in both the bottom floor and top floor or the roof. I decided to make the warehouse in a modular fashion so that it actually had 3 separate elements to it which can be taken apart if I needed to replace the lighting or if I needed to change the batteries or even just switch them on and off. If I wanted to replace the lights, for example, I could just remove the roof and then this section just lifts off. As you can see, the lights, it's the same lights, the same set of lights, and they're just run by a wire that just goes straight through. When I first installed the windows into the warehouse, I wasn't very pleased with the final result. The main issue was because they were so clear, you could see right into the building, you can see the fact that it was polystyrene, and you could actually see the individual lights and the fact that it was just like a big string of fairy lights. So that didn't really work for me. What I decided to do was that I needed some sort of diffusion in the inside of the window so that it would kind of just diffuse the light. The diffusion was achieved by using several layers of crepe paper. As it was on the inside, it didn't have to be too neat because when you look at it from the outside, it's fine. I wanted a way that I could put both sections together so that I could take them off, take them apart if I wanted to, or put them together and that they would stay in place. To hold these together, I glued some L-shaped strips of plastic onto the top section and allowed them to just slide comfortably over the corners of the bottom section and hold it in place. The roof is where I decided that I was going to include the battery pack for the lighting. I also needed some lighting around it, so what I decided to do was have it as a lift-off section as well. When I came to design the roof, I'll be honest, I've probably over-engineered it. I've made it in such a way that it actually has a locking mechanism on it, so you have to pull it and lift it off. Probably not required, but this was just me messing around. Little sticks at the ends, These are for the roof, and the tinfoil is just for preventing light leakage. There is a certain way that this goes on. As you'll notice that on the roof section there is the air conditioning unit on one end and a drain pipe on the other. As you can see, there is a large loading bay on the front of the building. This is the side that lines up with the air conditioning unit. And then the back of the building just has the drain pipes. Once I'd finished making the basic structure of the building itself, I came to start weathering it, painting it, and then I decided to incorporate some shutters. The shutters themselves are basically just built with some matchsticks and some corrugated card. These were just cut to size, glued together and then stuck onto the building. What I then did was I then masked up the building and I painted it using my airbrush. In hindsight, I think what I would do in the future if I was to build this again would be to paint the shutters before attaching it to the building. It would make it a lot simpler, and basically I wouldn't have to worry about masking the whole building. This masking tape is more difficult to get off than I thought it would be. Slightly nervous about how this is coming out. Slightly nervous about peeling the tape off as well. It's not easy because some of the tape's gone under the shutters. So there we go. I really feel that the green shades work well with the red brick. A few little touch-up bits that I need to sort out. It did work out fine, but I feel that it was maybe the awkward way of doing it. I then wanted to include some sort of loading area, loading bay, in front of some of the shutters. As you would imagine a normal warehouse would have, where the vans or the lorries would back up, the shutters would go up and then they'd be able to load onto a level platform rather than having to lift up and down. These were just built basically out of some lollipop sticks, and then they were all stuck onto the building. The bollards were then glued onto the loading bay areas just to kind of keep vans and lorries from backing into them as you would in real life. I used a piece of plastic rod that I randomly found. I then painted it with some leftover yellow gloss paint that I had lying around, and I used a stippling texture just to make it a bit more interesting really. Everything is pretty much hand painted. Even the health and safety notices that I've placed around a building have been drawn by hand. This is just basically because I didn't have access to a working printer when I was designing this. If I do have access to one, then obviously I would print the signage. It would look a bit more professional, but I'm not bothered. I spent some time trying to discover the correct sort of diameter for industrial drain pipes. This was actually more difficult than I thought, and eventually what I used was some washing line. When I stuck the drain pipes onto the buildings, I decided I wanted to paint them. The drain pipes themselves didn't actually stand out, which is something that I kind of wanted from the building. So then I decided to use the same bright yellow gloss that I'd used for the bollards, and this worked really, really well. Now admittedly, they're not very realistic. You wouldn't have bright yellow drain pipes on an industrial building, but from my point of view, I do like it. It's a stylised piece, as I've mentioned before, and I think that on this particular building it works really well. The final touch I added to the warehouse was the Aircon unit that's on the side of the building. Now this was actually just a piece that came off a bed. I liked the shape of it, so I painted it with a sort of metallic finish and stuck it on. Again, not particularly stereotypical, however, it looks fine and I'm quite happy with it. When I came to designing the warehouse, I wasn't entirely sure what sort of size to make it. I didn't do any kind of formal research into warehouse sizes, although what I did was I decided to base it loosely on the size of the Metcalfe goods shed and the Metcalfe semi-detached houses. What I did was I made them slightly larger than that because I thought that warehouses would be generally larger than those type of buildings in real life. I think that with regards to the scale, I've got it more or less about right. But I would be interested in knowing what you guys think, so do leave a comment down below. Do you think it's too big? Do you think it's too small? Is it about right? Would be interesting to get some feedback on that. Generally, I am really pleased with the outcome of the warehouse. I feel that it's actually turned out really, really well. I think that if I was to rebuild it again, I would probably stick to more or less the same sort of techniques that I've used for creating this. There are elements to the warehouse that I'm not entirely happy with. For example, the roof. I do feel that I should have maybe extended the corrugated card out a little bit so that there's a bit more of an overhang on all of the sides. The bit here is fine, but the rest of it is just a little bit too short. I also feel that the numbers on the bays would have been better if I'd maybe used a template rather than just paint them by freehand. But it is what it is, really. The painting of the warning markers around the loading bays, I don't feel that they are particularly consistent, so I'm not entirely happy with them. They look okay, and it'll be fine for just, for the model itself. But again, if I was to do it again, I'd like to maybe have used a template or something like that, just to make it a bit more neater. When I initially designed the building, I made sure that the shutters were all the way around the building so that there was access full 360. However, in hindsight, when I'm putting it on the layout, I'm actually going to use two sides to the building, and the rest of it's going to be up against either scenery or like a brick wall or something like that. So I think I would have probably redesigned it so that there was only two sides with access, and then obviously the other sides would have just been brick walls. But generally, other than that, yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. I think that the lights work really, really well. I am pleased at the fact I managed to get some lighting in this, and as I say, it's completely independent of external power sources or wires, which was obviously one of the design briefs that I wanted to include. But I would be interested in knowing what you guys think, so do leave a comment down below. Would be interesting to get some feedback on that. If you're interested in following my progress on this model railway in a shed, then please like this video and subscribe to my channel. As well as posting regular updates, I will also be posting various videos, including tutorials, techniques, hints and tips, as well as much more. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time.